In any historical work of fiction, an understanding of the historical context for the action in the story can significantly enhance the appreciation of it. Alan Grant's Refugee 2017 is no exception. To more fully appreciate Grant's novel, it helps to understand a little bit about the Cuban exodus. In 1994, the migration pressure increased rapidly, and so to relieve some of this pressure, on August 13th, the president of Cuba, Fidel Castro, allowed anyone who wanted to leave the republic to do so. After Castro's announcement, more than 30,000 Cubans took rafts and boats to get away from their native country. Most of them were heading to United States, and during this one-month period beginning the Castro's declaration, the U.S. Coast Guard rescued 21,000 Cubans near Florida. Later, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton, will order the U.S. Coast Guard to transfer the rafters to U.S. military bases in Guantanamo and Panama. Nevertheless, the motivations that led the residents of Cuba to leave their country are crucial to understand the Cuban exodus. First of all, Cubans wanted to leave Cuba for economic reasons. During the 90s, there was the so-called Basero crisis in Cuba, which is an economic crisis. While this special period, the economy in Cuba contracted by the third to an half. The food rationing intensified, the cost of cement production, the scarcity of tools and building materials also increased. This situation was undoubtedly related to the shift in trade and economic relations with socialist countries. Eastern Europe countries and the former Soviet Union covered 85% of Cuba's exports and were the main source of the island's financial development. Then the socialist regime disappeared in these countries, which meant that the principal economic support of Cuba vanished, and this overnight. Secondly, many Cubans wanted to leave Cuba for political reasons. Their freedom was limited. They couldn't say nor press everything they wanted to. It was a one-party state. Opposition political parties and independent civic groups were illegal. Fidel Castro's and its government were not respecting the human rights. They controlled speeches by laws banning enemy propaganda and clandestine printing. And if Cubans didn't obey, they were sent to jail on charges as serious as rebellion with no proper due of law and order, or even executed. Finally, leaving Cuba was what lots of Cubans wanted because of social reasons. The Cubans had many problems to deal with. The population was starving because it was getting harder to find food. At some point, they have to eat anything they could find, even cats. The starvation caused the increase in the rate of the elders' death by 20%. Also, the malnutrition created an epidemic called neuropathy. Furthermore, because of their conditions, the Cubans' frustration increased, which led to violence and vandalism movements like manifestations in Havana. To conclude, gaining a better understanding of Cubans' economic, political, and social reasons to leave Cuba will help readers of Grant's novel Refugee to more fully sympathize with Isabel, a Cuban young girl leaving her country because of her father's actions against the government. In fact, Isabel and her family will be part of the Cuban exodus. Thank you for listening.